Well, blessings and thanks for joining me once again. As we begin today, I'd like to share a psalm of encouragement that is taken from Psalm 124, verses 2 through 5. The psalmist writes, "If the Lord had not been on our side when men attacked us, then they would have swallowed us alive in their burning anger against us. Then the waters would have engulfed us, the torrent would have swept over us, the raging waters would have swept over us." In the 16th chapter of John's Gospel, we find Jesus challenging the view of worldly conformity as he shares about being different. Now, before arriving at this chapter, Jesus had been engaged in a lengthy discourse with his closest friends, his disciples, concerning his imminent departure. Though they had failed to fully grasp what he was trying to share with them, it was evident from his teaching that his earthly ministry was quickly winding down and drawing to a close. He had been speaking in figurative language as he shares with these disciples in verse 25 of our text, but he determines at that point to begin speaking clearly and decisively to them. Let me share the words of Jesus we find recorded in John 16, verses 25 to 33. Jesus says, "I have spoken these things to you in figures of speech. A time is coming when I will no longer speak to you in figures, but I will tell you plainly about the Father. In that day you will ask in my name. I am not telling you that I will make requests to the Father on your behalf, for the Father himself loves you, because you have loved me and have believed that I came from God. I came from the Father and have come into the world. Again, I am leaving the world and going to the Father." "Ah," his disciples said, "now you're speaking plainly and not using any figurative language. Now we know that you know everything and don't need anyone to question you. By this we believe that you came from God." And Jesus responded to them, "Do you now believe? Look, an hour is coming and has come when each of you will be scattered to his own home, and you will leave me alone. Yet I'm not alone, because the Father is with me. I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. You will have suffering in this world. Be courageous. I have conquered the world." You know, as we discover in our reading of verse 25 and following, we find Jesus is beginning to address some misconceptions that his followers had found themselves grappling with. They were troubled by them. They were trying to understand what he's saying to them in all of these things. Then as we arrive at verse 30, we find the disciples finally come to understand and even believe that Jesus has truly come from God. Notice again what the disciples declare in verse 30. "Now we know that you know everything and don't need anyone to question you. By this we believe that you came from God." Then, as recorded in verse 31, Jesus begins to warn them, warning them that a time is coming when their belief in him as the true Messiah, as the Redeemer, would be tested. And notice what he declares to them. He says, "Look, an hour is coming and has come when each of you will be scattered to his own home, and you will leave me alone. Yet I am not alone, because the Father is with me." But notice that Jesus didn't leave them without any hope, because he declares in verse 33, "I have told you these things so that you may have peace. You will have suffering in this world. Be courageous. I have conquered. I have overcome the world." Folks, let me share a few thoughts with you here. Following Christ, has never been about blending in. Social media and these other things that we are so engaged with today try to prompt us. Others try to prompt us through these means to blend in with their line of thinking, to blend in and just believe as I believe. But let me tell you something. We've been called to be different. To be different than those that are in the world. We are called to stand out. You see, following Jesus means we are to be like him. We are to respond to life and to relate to people the way he did. As a believer, you're going to often face the opportunity to choose between conforming to the world and the world's way or being different, being Christ-like. Let me tell you something. Jesus often went against the flow. And he encouraged and continues to encourage his followers to do likewise. He is challenging you and me as believers today to go against the flow of this world. Oh, I know it's easier to go with the flow. It's easier to not challenge the world's perspective on things. But let me tell you something today. God is going to hold you and I accountable one day for the choices we've made. And I want to encourage you today to stand out. I want to encourage you today to make a difference. Because the world is going to challenge you to get in line and to act right. But Jesus is calling you to stand out and to choose to be different. Don't allow this world to intimidate you. Make a difference by daring to be different for Jesus. Strive to be a Jesus follower, difference maker. But let me tell you something. As you do so, you're going to discover yourself being in trouble with this world. Being a difference maker is not an easy task, but I assure you it is an eternally rewarding task. Folks, it can be risky. It can be uncomfortable. It can cost you friendships and relationships. It could even cost you your job. But the text assures us of something here, that we can rest in the assurance of the fact that Jesus has overcome the world and is not going to leave you helpless as you strive to become a difference maker for him. Until next time.